And hello again, everybody. Welcome to my kitchen. I'm going to do a sausage today, so I want to show you some of the mise en place, things that we get set up for this. Here's some of the food. We have black pepper, salt, sugar, paprika, oregano, basil, hot chili peppers, garlic, fennel, a little bit of whole coriander seed. There's also some pork belly here. I have a scale so I can be accurate on weights and measures depending on what your recipe is calling for. And I'm going to need an extra little bit of pork fat. So I saved some of these belly pieces, and I'm going to take the fat off this belly by starting with a flexible blade here and just cutting down on one end all the way to the skin. Once I see these little pimples, I'm pretty right as close to the skin as I can be. So I'm going to then get started and go the other direction. Keep the knife nice and flat, stay down on the skin, and remove all of this fat. So I've already done that. I just wanted to show you how to get it done. If you have pieces of back fat that you can get some of this really good fat from. I put mine in the freezer so it's a bit firmer, but this is good stuff for grinding. And that's ideal for sausage making. The skins themselves, we can do something with them. We can make chicharron if we like. Also, a couple things I also need here is spice grinder. I need a skillet. It's a good idea to wear gloves when you're dealing with ground meats. I have some little tiny skewers that are very sharp. We use these for poking holes in sausages. I need some twine. I have my grinder set up, ready to go with the large die. We went over all of that yesterday, so we can continue on. This is the auger's in, the cutting blade is in, the die is in. We have a tray up top. We have a couple sausage horns. We also, for this grinder, there's a little attachment that moves the meat through the horns, like that, inside the machine. Need a bowl, or a couple of them. I also have, this is a stomper, so it can stomp things down inside there. It's good to have a scraper if you need a scraper. And then we have meat that is in the freezer. So we're going to pull some pork meat out. I have 5 pounds here. I have a little bit of fat. It's actually 4.5 pounds of meat and 8 ounces of fat. And we're going to put all of this through the grinder. This meat is a little bit starting to freeze, yet squishy. So very, very cold. And we're going to break this up, put it down through the machine with this little bit of fat. So I'll let the fat sit here. It's also pliable, but a little bit frozen. That's how we want the meat for grinding. When we get into this mode of sausage making, we definitely want to get this stuff very, very cold. One other ingredient I have for the recipe is some ice water. So I need a couple, like 6 ounces of ice water, 3/4 of a cup. And we'll have that ready to go. If it just sits around room temperature with ice in it, it's perfectly fine. Okay, so let's get to work here. First thing I'm going to do is toast up some of my seeds. So I have these seeds here, whole seeds. Any whole seeds that I have are really good to go into a toasting mode. This will wake up the oils in the seeds a little bit, get them a little bit more flavorful. The difference is very, very noticeable. So toast these up a little. I'll put them on a medium heat right now. The pan's nice and warm, so it's ready to go. I'll throw the chilies in toward the end, and we'll just toast these up. You can see my fennel seeds are nice and green. That's a good sign that they're nice and fresh, which means better flavor in there. Okay, these are starting to crackle and pop. You can see a little smoke coming off of there. So I'm going to turn the heat off. Throw the chilies in. Okay, I haven't mentioned what kind of sausage we're making yet, so if anybody wants to chime in at this point, give a guess. Yeah, that's right, exactly. This is going to be a hot Italian sausage. Okay, so that's done. You can see a little smoke coming off. I don't want to get it too strong. We'll get a little plate so we get them out of the hot pan so they don't burn. And let that cool down just for a moment or two. I'm still going to use the saute pan, so don't get rid of it. We'll just wipe out all the spices, put it back on. Yeah.
Chilies.
That's it. Okay, so the seeds are going to go into a grinder. We're just going to break them up. We're not making like a whole powder out of this. We just want to touch this grinder a couple times, give it a quick whirl. Maybe one more. There we go. Okay, so you can see these are starting to break up, but still some whole seeds in there. That's the idea. So we're going to introduce some of the meat to our hopper. Along with the meat, we'll add a little bit of fat. And we load up our hopper. I don't want to put too much weight in here. At school, we use a lot more weight. This one here might tip on me, so I don't want to put too much weight into it. And I'm going to distribute the fat a little bit through the lean meats so that we have a nice distribution of that fat with lean. So we'll go ahead and turn this on. We don't want to run it without meat in it, so I'll push some meat down the hole here and then we'll get it started. You'll notice the grind here has a nice separation between the lean and the fat. That's intentional. If it looks all mixed together and creamy, then that is not a good grind. You're going to stop and check and assess that everything is done properly as far as the setup in the grinder. Okay, I'm going to take a little bit of meat here and throw it down through the top just to make sure I got everything come through here. Okay, when the meat stops moving through, that means I'm about done. And we'll have here 5 pounds of ground meat. Next thing I'm going to do is take this apparatus off. I'm going to switch to a mixing bowl and I'm going to mix all of my ingredients here on the machine. We'll add water during that time. So I'm going to have to remove this. This will take me a minute and I'll be right back. Okay, so I'm pulled apart the grinder here and I'm going to reassemble it with the auger. There's a little bit of coarse tissue. Anything that is stuck inside the grinder never goes into your sausage because you may have connective tissue, you may have bone chips, you may have fragments of things that you do not want in the sausage. So don't put any of this meat into your sausage. You can put it into stock, that's fine. Normally we just toss it out. Okay, I'm gonna put on the auger in here, get that seated. Make sure it's all the way back. We're gonna put on this little threader here. This thing is gonna help the meat move through. And we're gonna use the large casing tube that sits right on top there. Have to balance it and take the collar, put that collar on, screw everything down nice and tight. Okay, so this is ready to go. I'm not going to attach it yet. I'll just set it aside. And then we're going to mix all of our spices and ingredients together in one bowl. So salt, a little bit of sugar, some Italian seasonings, that's oregano, basil, black pepper, lots of paprika. We'll save the garlic for last. In fact, we can put the garlic in as we mix. And then our seeds. Try not to cough and wheeze. It got me once again. Okay, I'll mix these up. We want a good mixture here because I can't probably put everything in all at once. So I'm going to go half and half and then mix everything together afterwards just a little by hand. So we want to make sure we get a good mix on all of this. Okay, and then we'll put half of our meat in. I could put that on a scale and make sure I got exactly half. I could scale out all my seasonings, make sure I have exactly half. But I've done this a few times, so you should have some confidence in your chef instructor. Okay, this one's a little bit more difficult to do, so I'll do it on a cutting board here. And with my scraper, just like the kingpin drug lord, we divide it into two. Okay, one will go here. And one will go here. That's actually a pretty decent way to split up your seasonings. Sometimes your scale doesn't measure as accurately as you'd like. Maybe you need a half an ounce and you can't scale down a half an ounce, so you measure out an ounce and you split it. And you pretty much will have 2 halves of an ounce. Okay, and this one we're going to put in a paddle. We'll introduce the paddle here. Get this one going in there. Make sure your bowl's locked down, and we're going to just mix on slow until everything comes together. I keep one of these cafeteria trays hanging around because I haul stuff back and forth between school and home. And it works really good for stuff like this. Okay, I need 3/4 of a cup of ice water, which I'm going to split in 2. So I'm going to add half of it now, a little bit at a time. Just like we're doing oil in a salad dressing. Nice and slow, easy go. Until I have half of it in there. I'm going to stop the mixer, scrape the paddle down, move around the meat here, make sure everything from the bottom gets folded in. And then we'll go back to mixing. We only want to mix this for a short amount of time. The more you mix it, the more friction you create, and we know that friction's not good for sausage making. So try to keep everything nice and cold. Even this bowl should be on another container of ice if you have it available. I don't have that much ice. It's Friday night, it's cocktail hour. I gotta save the ice. There's more important things. But the meat is super cold. Okay, and that, I'll just give it one last quick burst of power, and off it goes. This is now ready to go. I will recommend at school that you leave everything in the mixer until you've made a test run. But since I have 2 batches that I'm going to fold together, I'm gonna wait to do that. So we have Italian sausage here, and this is going to be spicy Italian because it's got the chilies and the paprika in it. Sweet Italian is not really sweet, even though we have a little sugar in this. The sweet Italian is going to be just not spicy. So that is the difference between the Italian sausages, sweet Italian versus the spicy Italian. Spicy Italian also is going to come out red because of all of the chilies, where the sweet Italian is not. Okay, then we'll mix this one up. Let it mix first with the salt so that you can incorporate all of the ingredients in there. Remember, salt is going to bring out a little bit of the albumin from the lean meat and help bind, stick everything together. Once everything is nice and compact and you can see it moving around in there, it kind of comes away from the edge of the bowl, then we can add the rest of our water. Nice and easy, don't flood it. A lot of Italians, they may be adding wine as well, white wine, or possibly a lighter bodied red. Okay, so we have that in there. Some of these recipes also, you're going to see vinegar added to it. If you wet your hands, things don't stick so much. Okay, so I'm going to scrape everything down again. Make sure we get all of the spices well incorporated. So knock everything out of the paddle. Notice I'm not using a whip. Move everything from the bottom, Up. Yeah, we finished the mixing process. So vinegar is also a common additive to some sausages, especially chorizo, and sometimes the Italian sausages or wine. So a little acidity does come into play, especially when you're using things that are going to be a dry cure, like salami. You need acidity in those. So oftentimes they're going to put in quite a bit of acid, even lactobacilli, or something very similar to yogurt. The bacteria that are in yogurt, they add to salamis to give them sour tang. So you will see that many of these recipes are going to contain some kind of acidity. Okay, mixing by hand is okay, but it's frowned upon to do too much hand contact, especially because my hands are warm. Even though I have the gloves on, we're just going to put this together and give it one final fold. And in case I need to go back to the mixer to add in any other ingredients, I don't want to wash everything and set up for my next step, which is the casings. Okay, so I'll just grab a little bit of this. I'll make a little meatball. Okay, smash it down so we have a flat patty. Notice the patty really sticks. Eventually it's going to fall. There it goes. But it should have this nice sticky consistency to it because of the albumin and the emulsion that we've made. Okay, I got to put a little bit for my camera operator here. This is one of my favorite parts of the day, is tasting sausages. So we're going to put this in the skillet. We don't want to cook it too hot. We'll keep it rather cold. Rather low, I should say. And then the rest of the meat we'll keep cold in the refrigerator. Okay? Okay, just a tiny bit of oil there. And then we're going to put our patty in. And keep it on a low temperature. Don't heat it too much, because too much caramelization, remember it's got some sugar in there, lots of spices, it's going to change the flavor profile. So we want to have it as plain as possible so that we can taste all the ingredients in there. Second side. So here we are, this is finished. Hopefully we're cooked all the way through. Not too much color on there. When we're sampling our sausage, we want to cook it thoroughly. Don't overcook it because it'll be dry. And then we need a fork and knife, and we want to slice this. So stab the sausage, get the knife, and go through and cut all the way through one half of the sausage. What we're looking for is a nice edge, perfectly cut, so that we can demonstrate that this emulsion is tight enough to hold the pressure from a knife coming through it, and it doesn't break and crumble. So this is an important feature of testing your sausage, to see that things are holding together very well. As you can see, it does. And then we have to taste. If it's good, you go back for a second one. Yeah. So when you're tasting sausage, there's one thing I've noticed, is that it doesn't have a lot of garlic in it. Oops. Take a look. Garlic did not go into the mix. So 2 lessons learned here. Number 1, taste your sausage before you go to the final step. Number 2, check to make sure you have a good emulsion prepared and get all your ingredients in the sausage. Sometimes it's good to have a check sheet if you have a very complicated or elongated recipe. All right, and that one is for the camera. We're back here. We have our sausage meat, 5 pounds of meat. I'm just going to spread it out gently. It's been in the refrigerator, and we're going to add our garlic that we didn't add earlier. Try not to get too much hand contact because it warms up the emulsion, but we already have a stable emulsion, so that's good. And then we'll just layer that in there and fold it in. Kind of like working bread. And that should do it. Next thing we're going to do is load the hopper with a bit of meat. Give yourself a little room here so that the meat is not really packed in here. We're going to do little bits at a time. And then we're going to move this meat into a bowl. We'll go into our mixing bowl right there. Rinse down our tray, and then we'll start sausage making. Okay, it's good to leave a little water on the tray because that way the intestines will slide on there. So our casings are going to be natural hog casing. Natural casing mean it came right from the animal. I've tied all of these casings up yesterday. You can see there's quite a bit of them. I have a lot of salt in the package. So the salt is going to help preserve these. And we can store these in this package with salt for up to a year. When we are going to use them, we put them in some fresh water. We let them soak for about 20 minutes. I have them tied up so that you can see one piece of intestine going through the middle and actually hanging out the other side. So I should be able to find an end piece here. If I pull on that, there's the end. And then we'll gently unravel. We've already rinsed these casings, so they are ready to go. The one thing I want to do is get some water inside the casing. So I'm going to open it up, put my fingers into the casing. If it's lamb casing, it's not going to be so easy. So you can just hold it open and run a little water in there or pour some water in. I'm going to dip it and get a little water into the casing. Do it several times. Okay, now I got a little water sausage in there, and I'll set that right on my cutting board. I'll put some water here on the horn. You can even use a little bit of meat and put it on there, but the water's fine. And then we're going to thread the casing on with one hand, and I'm going to keep the water to the back side with the other hand. The water in the casing helps put a little bit of moisture in here so that these casings slide easily. Careful of the knots. Try to keep the casing out front of the horn. If it goes down below or to the sides, it gets stuck. And these horns may have a little bit of rough edge to them. They're brand new, and we don't want to poke a hole in the casing. We've already determined that these casings are ready to go. There's no holes, there's no leaks, they're in good shape. Okay, so I'm almost ready here. These horns are very short, they're not very long. At school we have longer horns. Okay, and here comes the very end. Okay, before I do anything else, I want to move the sausage to the very end of the horn. So I'm going to do that with the machine. It's good to keep a little fresh water available too, so if you need to dip your hands or do anything here. I'm going to start to push down some of this meat here, and we'll just run it nice and slow until I see it come out, and then stop it and try over the top. You can see air bubbles coming through. That's it. So now the meat has come all the way out of the horn. Then I'm going to pull the casing and put a knot in it. So I just loop it, push through the loop, pull on the casing and push it backwards towards the meat. Okay, get everything nice and tight. It's okay if the knot is not perfectly centered. Then we're going to start to move meat through and into the casing. The idea here is to try to avoid too much air. And I'm going to hold the casing back a little bit and let the machine push the meat into the sausage. So keep a little tension on here. And now we go. Don't put too much pressure on the meat, otherwise it will bust the casing. Now that I've got it started, I'll start to move a little bit here. Every once in a while you might have to back up the casing just to keep it nice and steady as far as diameter. Okay, we're coming to the end of this pressing process, and I gotta say this is not the easiest way to make a sausage. School is so much easier. Okay, I'm gonna let that run for a second. You can see it's still coming out. I'm holding back the sausage a little bit. Make sure everything I got goes through, because I worked for it. Okay, so another thing I'm going to need here is a knife. A paring knife will work really good because I'm going to pull out my casing here at the very end. I can even undo this and try to push little bits of sausage through that I have stuck in the machine. Okay, since this isn't the ground portion of the recipe, this is just the stuffing. All of this meat is good. And I just stuff it right through the horn. This is how people used to make sausages in the olden days. You just get a funnel and start stuffing. everything through. Okay, I got as much in there as I can. If I have these gaps, I just have to push gently and get the sausage to pack down. That's going to leave some air holes in here, but when I've got it, I then give myself some extra casing here and cut. This casing can be used again because it is technically clean. So I'll just put it back in the water and I can put that in with my casings. Now we have to link the sausage. And I've got 10 pounds of sausage here. I'm going to start on the one end that has a tie. So this end is completely sealed. And then I estimate the size of my sausage, and using my thumb and finger, I'm going to crimp the sausage once, twice, 3 times, and then twist. Okay, then we're going to measure out the next sausage, crimp gently here. You don't want to go too hard because they can break, but once it's nice and thin, you can do a little jump rope here. And then we go down to the next one. Gentle, easy, and swing it. Try to keep the sausages at a regular interval so that they all look the same. It's okay if one way you're twisting and the other you're untwisting, because in the end everything will end up with twists. So gently here. And I'm going to go through this whole thing and link. So you can do this fairly quick once you get the feel for it. The thing is, don't press too hard too soon, because you will pop these. And once you've done that, all that hard work of stuffing the casing is for naught. You can see why the water helps move things around a little bit. And I leave the other end of the casing open in case I have to move the meat in a different direction because it may be packed too tightly. If I do get a hole, I just have to tie it off on both sides of the hole and then cut the casing so that the meat doesn't squeeze out. I'll squeeze out what's broken around the hole and then move the excess up or down the casing. Okay, maybe 2 more. So gently, easy. It's kind of tight in here. So you always want to leave a little bit of room, and then this is the very end. I can just pack it back down, put a twist in there, and then I'm going to tie a loop by making a circle and pulling all the way around. Hold that loop until you're at the very edge of the sausage, and then push the loop, pull the casing. Now we are done. We've done Italian sausage. Some of these sausages are going to go to a smokehouse. Italian sausage typically is considered a fresh sausage, so there's no TCM in here. This is just the most basic sausage that we can produce, although this one has some good flavor in it. This is going to be a nice Italian sausage. So these typically would be like 3 pieces to the pound, but they're probably a little heavier than that. These are almost 8 ounces a piece, some of these. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, maybe we got close to 10 sausages here, probably a little more. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 15. So they're a little less than 8 ounces, maybe 6 ounces per sausage. So that's considered a 3-to-1, 3 sausages to the pound. And those are pretty good sized sausages there. Italian sausage. We'll cook some up later today and let you taste it. One thing I haven't shown you yet is the skewers. So if we have bubbles, like on that very end one, we take a very sharp implement. There's something called a sausage pick that can be used for finishing up the sausages, and where you have an air hole and you can see an actual bubble, like here, there's some bubbles. We just pick the bubble and it squeezes the air through, but no meat comes through. So we definitely want to look for any air bubbles in our sausages, and then don't be afraid to just pick several times with a very short, thin implement. Then the last thing we do is tie these if we want. So if we're going to be hanging these and putting them in a smoker, we don't want them to unravel. So we take a piece of string, go at the juncture between two sausages, and just tie a little tiny knot. You don't need a lot. I can make a ton of these little ties in no time at all, just by wrapping the string around my hands. I'll just take it like this, hold the edge, I space my fingers out a little bit, wind the string around a couple times, cut the string, take my hand out but hold everything together, and then on the cutting board, just cut right through. And then turn it around, do the same on the other side. There we go. So lots of little strings here, and we can tie up the sausages just like that. And then these can hang overnight in the refrigerator. If we're going to smoke them, we must hang the sausages. And they will form a pellicle over the outside of the sausage. That pellicle will help bring the smoke in very nicely to the sausage.